The first time I heard of Bali was during a conversation with my brother, Sidney. We were discussing the general unrest of the world, and then he said,
If it comes to the worst, Charlie, I'll go to Bali. People say the problem of living is easy there.
We are in 1932, and Charlie Chaplin is about to celebrate his 43rd birthday. He happens to be in Bali, but none of this is planned. This is where destiny has taken him, and the Balinese world offers a very special encounter. This is his first real escape from Hollywood. The visit is not only to be a source of artistic rejuvenation, but a critical window into the colonial world that would contribute to shaping his views on colonialism and ultimately on capitalism itself. The truth is that this voyage of epiphany reveals a multifaceted man who is far more than the entertainer he is sometimes known to be. If the details of the journey can be traced thanks to the travel notes taken by Sidney, the significance of this sojourn in Bali was first captured in Charlie's own travelogue entitled A Comedian Sees the World, published in a women's magazine soon upon his return, and recounted again 30 years later, in 1964, in his autobiography. Bali was perhaps more than an anecdote or a mere footnote in his busy life. It was a turning point, situated exactly when Chaplin was faced with doubts about the meaning of life. At the tail end of the silent film era, Chaplin is more than a filmmaker. He embodies the movies. Actor, director, producer, he does everything. And he does it exactly the way he wants, with the creative freedom he gained from the establishment of United Artists, together with his comrades Douglas Fairbanks, D.W. Griffith and Mary Pickford. Above all, Chaplin is truly the star known to everyone in the world. Photographed, drawn, caricatured, his bowler hat, cane and waddle are familiar to all, as far as the South Seas.
but I have had to sweat pretty hard for my success. The trouble of it is that things don't get any easier, and I've got to go on beating myself all the time. Success is wonderful, but with it grows the strain of trying to keep pace with that inconstant nymph, popularity.
He is at the midpoint of his life and career, facing both a personal and professional crisis. Mildred Harris divorced him in 1920. Lita Gray did the same in 1927. These scandals are perfect for the sensation-mongering press, and each time ending in sensationally huge alimonies. Ex-wives, lawyers, journalists, everyone seems to want a piece of him. And he grows tired of all this. Worse still, sound is becoming the new rage in the movie industry, casting doubts over the future of his career.
With the volume control, we turn this light up and the sound becomes louder.
The truth is that at the beginning they really know nothing about controlling sound. But soon MGM produces the Broadway Melody, Hollywood's first full-length sound musical, and a cheap, dull affair it is. But what a stupendous box office success. Overnight, every theatre begins wiring for sound. And on film sets, men, geared like warriors from Mars, sit with earphones while the actors perform with microphones hovering above them like fishing rods. How can anyone be creative with all that junk around them? But I'm not against the talkies. I'm just against appearing in talkies only for myself, only for my character. After all, the screen chaplain is not quite human. He does not belong to the ordinary world, and the matrix out of which he is born is as mute as the rags he wears. Some people suggest that the tramp might talk, but this is unthinkable, for the first word he ever uttered would transform him into another person. No, dialogue does not have a place in the sort of comedies I make. For years, I have specialized in one type of comedy, strictly pantomime. I have measured it, gauged it, studied it. I have established exact principles to govern its reactions on audiences. It has a certain pace and tempo. Dialogue always slows action, because action then must wait upon words. Ah, pantomime is far more poetic, and it has a universal appeal that everyone understands, if it is well done.
But what Charlie is afraid of is that with sound, cinema becomes simply less cinematic. With these thoughts, he then stubbornly embarks on the production of one more silent film, City Lights. But it will not be easy, and he will have to struggle like never before with one of the longest production schedules in film history. 3 years into production, with no less than 180 days of filming. Chaplin hesitates to introduce dialogue or not.
Indeed, I have not definitely decided whether or not it is safe to proceed without a talking edition of the current picture. It will mean further delay and an additional expense because of the peculiar and special equipment required.
Finally, he decides to include some music, but rules out talking and dispenses with dialogue entirely. Instead, he strips down to a bare narrative, expressed only through the art of pantomime.
At last, City Lights is now finished. The only good thing about sound is that I can control the music, so I composed my own. Other than this music recording, City Lights remains an ideal silent picture.
Always full of irony, Charlie has very cleverly added sound to his movie in a way that ridicules the very idea of what talkies are about. As for the tramp, he still doesn't say a single word.
Yet I am now so anxious to know the fate of City Lights, and premieres are not indicative. It is the ordinary public that counts. Would they still be interested in a silent picture?
American audiences absolutely love the movie. It raises the nuanced complexities of the little tramp to a new level, proving that a single gesture, even a simple touch, is still able to convey much more than words. Mid-February 1931, he leaves the USA on board the Mauritania. All he wants now is to promote his new film to European audiences. Landing in Plymouth, he gets a very warm welcome before travelling by train to London.
But why is it that London always wrings my heart? Is it the love of my people? They are my people, these Cockneys. I am one of them. And as I look into their faces, I see that spiritual hunger, that inner craving. How little must come into their lives to be so appreciative for the trivial things that I've done. God, what kind of a filthy world is this, that makes people live such wretched lives that if anybody makes them laugh, they want to kneel down and touch his overcoat, as though he was Jesus Christ raising them from the dead. At the opening of City Lights in London, the picture goes over very well. I take my seat in the circle next to George Bernard Shaw. And for the next 3 weeks, I am kept busy with invitations. One is from the British Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald, another from Winston Churchill, and so on down the regal line.
March the 8th, 1931, Charlie Chaplin leaves England for his European tour. More premieres, more dinners, more parties. In Berlin, he is greeted by huge crowds, but also on behalf of the German film industry by Marlene Dietrich. This continues in Vienna, where the crowd grabs at him and carries him around. And then Paris. Staying at the Crillon Hotel, he's cheered by the crowd and hunted by the press. Caught in the whirlwind of his fame, he only feels more and more isolated. So much so that in March 1931, Charlie decides it is high time for much-deserved holidays. He chooses the French Riviera, where he reunites with his brother Sidney, who was settled in Nice a few months earlier. Ah, Sidney. During their impoverished youth in South London and their early days in Hollywood, he was the big brother who looked after Charlie's interest. He was also an actor, not without his own success. But looking for an early retirement, Sidney has chosen to enjoy the good life on the French Riviera, a bon vivant lifestyle that he is quite happy to introduce to Charlie. But after a few months of sunbathing in Juan-les-Pins, dining in Nice and partying in Monte Carlo, Charlie feels it's time for him to move on. He returns to London, but this time he is not the only important visitor in town. Gandhi is here for the Round Table Conference to discuss constitutional reforms in India. A meeting between Chaplin and Gandhi is organised, largely at the initiative of Gandhi's followers.
And now comes that uneasy, terrifying moment when I should say something astutely intelligent. As the Mahatma's mask-like expression is one of waiting, I feel that all India is also waiting on my words.
In the end, they talk about the mechanization of the world and whether or not it will improve working conditions and eventually free men from work. Meeting with Gandhi, one of the greatest icons of decolonization, is an interesting way to set the stage for Charlie's journey to the East, igniting in him a critical perspective on the colonial world he is about to encounter.
Anyway, I have dilly-dallied around Europe too long, and I know why. I can't determine my future plans, and I am obsessed by a depressing fear of being old-fashioned. It is these melancholy thoughts that keep me on a prolonged holiday. But my conscience keeps nagging at me. Get back to Hollywood and work. But I remember my mother saying during my second divorce, "Why don't you shed yourself of all these annoyances? Take a trip to the Orient and enjoy yourself, Charlie." So, as there is no vital hurry to get back to Beverly Hills, I decide to return to California via the Orient.
The departure to the Orient is from the port of Naples in Italy. So as not to travel alone, Charlie has asked his brother Sidney to join him. Sidney accepted, since having been a ship's boy at the age of 15, he still has a liking for long journeys.
My brother and I leave comfortably installed on the Japanese steamship Suwa Maru. All the staff are Japanese and so nice, doing everything in their power to make us even more comfortable. While crossing the Mediterranean, Sidney recommends visiting the island of Bali, saying how untouched it is by Western civilization.
Yes, Charlie. That's apparently an island where you can sit under the sweltering palms and pick the fruit off the trees. And just live as nature intended. There one doesn't worry about depression. The problem of living seems to be easy. That filmmaker called Roosevelt has been raving about it in the papers as being the last unspoilt paradise on Earth. If we want to see it unspoilt, Charlie, we really have to go now.
At first, Sidney's description doesn't arouse my interest. But when we are nearing Port Said, my brother brings me a travel book about Bali. After reading a chapter, I am sold. And from now on, Bali is on my mind.
Egypt. We're now in Port Said. Quick, let's motor through Cairo and have lunch at the Shepherd's Hotel. After lunch, we rush around town, shopping for white suits and tropical helmets. Then, of course, a visit to the pyramids and a photograph with camels. And now Charlie wants to buy a movie camera. Well, it's not that easy. Our travel agent, Cook, sends for it. Then dozens of people with dozens of cameras arrive at Cook's office. It's time to choose now, Charlie. We have to motor back to the ship. Cruising to Ceylon is rather uneventful. To kill time, we have our first Japanese dinner with the crew. Really nice. And the stewards perform Japanese dances for us. But what stiffness I have in my legs after sitting for 2 hours in Japanese fashion.
As the Japanese captain announces we are arriving at Colombo, our first southern port, the thrill increases.
There's a large crowd waiting for us. After a first stop by the Gal Fuss Hotel overlooking the Indian Ocean, we motored to the old royal town of Kandy in the hills. This is our first impression of the tropics. All along the road, we get the smell of spices and the perfume of the frangipani flower. The next morning, we visit the temple of the Sacred Tooth, which houses a relic of the Buddha. Charlie takes out his brand new camera and films a 2,500 years old exorcist dance. The Devil Dance.
But Ceylon is not what the Chaplin brothers are hoping for. And as they discover what the British Empire is really about, they can't help but notice the rather unpleasant aspects of colonialism.
Ah, these good old British methods of using the whip on the natives. We'd noticed the same in Egypt, and now we see it in Ceylon. Surely not our cup of tea, Charlie.
What they are really looking forward to is barley. They discuss it incessantly throughout their journey. So much so that the representation they form of it completely occupies their minds.
Our next port is Singapore. Myriads of sailboats and ocean liners lay dormant, waiting to be fed with cargo, and the harbour sings with colour and tropical life. My first view of the city surprises me. Perhaps my imagination was influenced by the lurid scenic portrayals of Hollywood's conception of it, with its narrow, evil streets and sinister droves on every corner. Instead, I find green, open spaces and gardens.
At the Seaview Hotel, we happen to be the only customers. The hotel is on the east coast of Singapore. It's all very colonial looking and rather quaint. Since we're the only clients here, they switch off all our lights after serving us drinks, because it's midnight. It's all right. We don't mind drinking in the dark.
And on March the 28th, 1932, the Chaplins leave Singapore, sailing on the Van Landsberg, a Dutch steamship heading for Batavia in Java.
Upon arriving in Batavia, we are first greeted by a large crowd waiting for us at the dock of Tanjung Priok. And then we are presented with a wreath of welcome on the boat.
Fans and photographers are all there for Chaplin. And this glorious arrival is recorded on film by Dutch cinematographer Henk Alsem, based in the Dutch East Indies, as they're called back then. Charlie has a meeting with a group of local film producers and distributors. Among them are the prominent Mr. Olsen from the Union of Film Importers in Java, and also Mr. Swemela, editor-in-chief of Filmland. This is the colonial world Charlie and Sidney step into upon reaching the Dutch East Indies. Once again, all of this buzzing activity is surely not what Charlie has travelled so far for. The Chaplin brothers also have tea at the Java Hotel with this Dutch cinematographer Henk Alsem, as they want to find out if he would be able to process the footage shot during the trip. But this choice will be the source of lots of worries. Once all this is settled and the necessary socialising is done, Charlie and Sidney finally hit the road in a magnificent Packard convertible, transporting them to Bandung and then all the way to Garut, 75 kilometres further to the southeast. Arriving at dusk, this is where they stay, at Nyamplang Hotel for their first Indonesian night.
In the morning, we find the hotel has a beautiful view over the mountains and valleys. We motor to Chirisupan Hot Springs, Lake Lelis, and Bagindit. And we throw out money to crowds of kids.
At the Garut railway station, a large Javanese crowd is waiting to bid them farewell before they board a train to Yogyakarta.
There's no room in the carriages, so we sit in the dining room all the way. But boy, what a ride! We're smothered with smoke and dust. You know what, Charlie? We shall not travel by train again. After spending a night at the Grand Hotel in Yogyakarta, we take a car again, motoring to Surabaya. On the way, we stop at Borobudur Temple, one of the greatest pieces of Buddhist architecture south of the equator. And here, look. That's me, Sidney. Hello, everyone. Charlie's holding the camera.
But strangely enough, there is no image of Charlie. Are we really to believe that Sidney did not film his illustrious brother in the splendid setting of Borobudur? Or is this the first indication that something somewhere is missing? A few more hours on the road, and they arrive in Surabaya, in East Java. This is the second largest city in the archipelago, after Batavia. And this is where the Chaplins hope to catch a boat for Bali.
We take our rooms at the prestigious Orania Hotel. Here again, there's a large crowd waiting for us. Charlie's even asked to give a speech over the local radio.
Oh, I'm having a very interesting journey. I'm happy and satisfied. How could I not be with so many smiling faces around me?
The Dutch community of Surabaya wants to give the Chaplins a welcome they'll never forget. There is a lot of eating, with a massive rice tafel representing the culinary diversity of the archipelago.
About 30 waiters line up, each carrying a different dish containing everything but the kitchen sink. So this is the mountain of food so beloved by the Dutch. The following morning, we finally board a KPM steamer sailing for Bali.
My first glimpse of Bali is on the next morning. Silvery downy clouds encircle the green mountains, leaving their peaks like floating fairy islands. We are cruising along its beautiful shores on the way to Buleleng, our landing place. We land at an old wooden dock by boat. This is northern Bali, a commercial centre with just one street of about 30 shops run by Chinese, Armenians and Hindus.
We are greeted by Mr. Minas, an enterprising Armenian who's quickly taken advantage of the development of early tourism. He owns a tour agency in Bali, as well as the movie theatre in Buleleng.
And to my horror, I discover that the natives of Bali have seen one or two of my pictures. Good heavens, Sidney, have I come all this way for another Rotary Club welcome?
Mr. Minas takes us to meet the Dutch governor, called the resident here, who has gathered some friends for the occasion.
After tea at the governor's house, we get into our automobile and speed along the road to South Bali.
Mr. Minas is with us in the car, but you really don't feel like making conversation. Instead, you absorb yourself in the scenery.
As we travel, the country becomes progressively beautiful. We pass through villages with beautifully built walls and imposing entrances along the roadsides. They are like the enclosures of some fine old estate. Then my brother Sidney nudges me.
Charlie, look here, quick!
I turn and see a line of stately creatures walking along the road dressed only in batiks wrapped around their waists, carrying their load upon their heads. The men are just as admirable as the women, with the sheen on their muscles as they carry across their shoulders bamboo poles laden with bundles of golden rice. There is a ceremonial grace in everything they do. The hotel in Denpasar in South Bali has only recently been built. It is in modern style. I must say, the Dutch do things well. The sitting rooms are open like a veranda and partitioned off with sleeping quarters at the back, clean and comfortable.
But Chaplin still has to accept an invitation from the Dutch authorities, as the deputy resident is expecting him.
The Dutch officials are strange. They remain also formally dressed in spite of the heat. But hearing that you, Charlie, dislike formality so much, they finally remove their jackets at dinner.
But apart from this rather small Dutch community and a few other Western expatriates who have settled in Denpasar, Chaplin has the pleasure of discovering that he is virtually unknown to the South Balinese. At last, this is what he's been longing for.
How nice to be away from so-called civilization, relieved of stiff shirt fronts and starched collars. I decide to go around almost native-like, with just a loose shirt, a pair of trousers and sandals. An artist, Al Hirschfeld, and his wife Florence contact us on our first evening. They have been living on the island for a couple of months and invite us to their little house rented from a Balinese nobleman. After dinner, Sidney and I walk with the Hirschfelds across a Balinese celebration. The night is warm and sultry. Eerie shapes loom on all sides as we stroll along. Giant banyan trees and tall palms stand silent against the starlit sky. Then, about 300 yards away, comes the clashing of gongs. Beneath the patio are seated musicians in square formation. Groups of natives are standing and squatting around, selling dainty edibles. center are dancers not more than 10 years old, swaying and undulating on their knees to the droning music. They are in perfect union, each deviating occasionally with a solo part and continuing again in perfect unity. There is something devilish about it. The click of the neck, the dart of the eye, the quivering fingers. The finish seems an anticlimax. The dancers sink back in the crowd, fading into nothingness. There is no applause. It is appreciated without comment. Those dancers have practiced assiduously, without any consideration for personal gain. It is all given free.
This leaves Chaplin very pensive. While in Hollywood, it is always art for business. In Bali, another life seems possible.
After the performance, we stroll over to Hirschfeld's house and sit on the veranda underneath myriads of stars. This is my first night in Bali.
Over the next few days, Florence Hirschfeld observes Chaplin with the intention of penning an article. She eventually publishes it on the 12th of June 1932 in the New York Herald Tribune. She notes that Chaplin quickly enters into the spirit of the place. Spontaneously mingling with the Balinese, he goes to the market, eats rice with his fingers from plates made of banana leaves, and squats on the ground to watch cockfights. But Chaplin, even without a cane and hat, also can't help testing the humor of the Balinese, who immediately nickname him the funny man.
I wonder if they will laugh at the same things. To me, humor is the subtle discrepancy we discern in what appears to be normal behavior. Indeed, through humor, we see in what seems rational, the irrational. In what seems important, the unimportant. Because of humor, we are less overwhelmed by the vicissitudes of life.
But what Chaplin has been immediately captivated by are the Balinese dances. A special occasion to see and film more of these comes up when a Balinese Raja from Gianyar invites the Chaplins and the Hirschfelds.
The Raja is celebrating because he has paid his debt to the government and is now free from the threat of imprisonment. An appropriate reason to celebrate, I think. As the festival is to last 2 nights, most elaborate preparations have been made, the cost of which I'm sure would again endanger our Raja friend. Many dances are performed, including the very striking Kris dance.
Unfortunately, our self-proclaimed journalist lady friend Florence, who, to my opinion, has been pestering us to death since we were in Bali, now rudely interrupts the dance in order to get the pose for her photograph. This immediately destroys all interest and suspense.
Eventually, it's not the Hirschfelds who would turn the Chaplin sojourn into a unique and meaningful experience.
Today at the hotel, I just received a note from someone called Walter Spies, saying he is a young painter and musician who has been living here for 5 years. If we are disposed, he can show us many things around the island. He is waiting in the lobby if we care to see him. But of course. What impresses me the most is his fine, sensitive, clean-cut features and his quiet manner, natural and courteous. Typical, I think, of a German aristocrat.
Walter Spies is a friend of film director Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau and has worked on his 1922 expressionist film, the famous Nosferatu. Then in 1923, Spies decided to leave all this behind, going first to Java, before settling in Bali in 1927. Spies has fallen in love with this island and its culture, in which art is an essential part of life. For this very reason, he is the perfect guide for the Chaplins. Day after day, they witness performances of rare dances and temple ceremonies, and it's impossible to stop Charlie from watching. So much so that he, Spies and Sidney sometimes don't return home until 3 or 4 in the morning.
One day, Spies takes us into the interior of the jungle, to a remote village. After an hour of walk, we witness a ceremony of flagellation that is a special offering to the gods of the temple. I film the maidens, taking their place in the large circle formed by the crowd. The priest, wrapped in a toga, with hair that falls about his shoulders like a dervish's, goes through a great deal of abracadabra. Giggling youths then break through and ransack the altar, grabbing what they can as the priest lashes violently out at them to rid them of evil spirits that tempted them to rob.
In between nights filled with dances and temple rituals, Walter Spies also takes the Chaplins for long walks in the forest, during which they often talk about cinema. Indeed, Spies still has a passion for the art of film. He's recently been involved in scripting a movie entitled The Island of Demons, entirely shot in Bali by a German crew. And perhaps they also talk about Murnau, who died in California almost exactly a year ago, in March 1931, just before the premiere of his latest film, Taboo, shot on another South Seas island. Encountering Balinese monkeys is also like some kind of movie reunion for Charlie, since he has acted with their distant cousins in his film The Circus. In a way, it's a bit like meeting old friends, very mischievous friends.
Sometimes we also dine at Walter Spee's house. It is a beautiful bungalow with a thatched roof situated on the brink of a ravine with a rushing river below. It is swarming with pets of all kinds, dogs and birds, monkeys. His little zoo, he calls it. Over dinner, Spees likes to tell many strange stories about the Balinese, the mystic side of them, and how cultured and refined they are. Then, later at night, Spees always plays on the piano several of his Balinese compositions, which seem to defy all musical notations.
Charlie, Spees even has some sort of Balinese symphony composed for 5 pianos. What an impressive man.
But what Spees is perhaps most renowned for is his unique style of painting, a combination of expressionist and surrealist techniques depicting Balinese life and landscapes. And it's one of these paintings that Charlie buys as a way to show his admiration for Spees, whose carefree lifestyle, free of almost any obligation, he finds truly enticing. So does all this talk about art and culture with the highly passionate Spees rekindle Charlie's creativity again? It's certainly in Bali that the camera purchased in Cairo comes into full use, as Chaplin undoubtedly feels inspired to film what he sees.
Yes, I decide to take more motion pictures of many of the Balinese ceremonies. I even have Walter arrange an elaborate dance that includes a full orchestra of 30 musicians and 30 dancers.
Filming on the island in 1932 is still something rather new. Indeed, only a handful of movies, including those Spees took part in, have been shot here since the mid-1920s. Particularly striking are the images filmed by Chaplin in the village of Bedulu, one of the centres of Legong dance in Bali. Spees knows this village very well and had chosen it a few months earlier for the filming of The Island of Demons.
Ah, Charlie, the village of Bedulu. 2 experienced dancers are teaching younger girls the movements of the Legong dance. Absolutely wonderful.
Charlie, alongside Walter Spees, adores the show. Having seen the students, he waits in anticipation for the young dance teachers to demonstrate their talent. This highly refined dance, with its intricate finger movements and complicated footwork, makes a very strong impression on Charlie, as he had himself been a child dancer. These young Balinese fascinate him with their incredible gestures and facial expressions, reminding him of his own art of pantomime. Some of these shots are reminiscent of his sense of composition in his own movies, in a way that prioritizes the beauty of pure movement.
The truth is that my own camera setup is based on facilitating choreography for the actor's movements. When a camera is placed on the floor or moves about the player's nostrils, it is the camera that is giving the performance and not the actor. The camera should not obtrude, that's all. And movement then becomes liberated thought.
Charlie gets particularly excited over the smallest hand movements and minute turns of the body. Having observed the dance carefully, he then reenacts the movements with almost photographic precision. Of course, there is, in Chaplin's eyes, some of the usual fascination of the Westerner for this island of the South Seas, where humanity somehow appears to be more in tune with nature.
How easy man falls into his natural state. And what does a career matter in this natural way of living? From these people, one gleans the true meaning of life, to work and play. Play being as important as work to man's existence. They work in the mornings. As a matter of fact, they work very hard, especially at harvest time. Then the whole island turns out to gather in the rice crops. But they are not really acquisitive people, and the rest of the time they devote to their religions, their amusements, their ceremonies. That's why they are happy. On the island, I rarely see a sad face. Look into the eyes of the masses in our large cities, and you will see harassed, defeated souls, and in the eyes of most of them, weary despair. Yet in the eyes of the Balinese is only tranquility. All their standards are different from anything I've ever seen. Here, I think I would prefer to settle down forever. And how far removed I now feel from the rest of the world. Europe and America seem unreal. Yet I'm sure that it takes a lot of character to establish oneself so thoroughly in the life of the Balinese, as does my friend Walter Spies.
Yet while Charlie Chaplin shares the enthusiasm of almost all new Western visitors to Bali, he isn't entirely naive either, and he perceives that there is another side to this so-called paradise. While early Western tourists and artists are flocking to Bali to enjoy this exotic life, the Balinese peasantry sometimes lives in near abject poverty, largely due to the exploitative system established by the colonial Dutch administration after it took full control of the island in 1908. Moreover, following Dutch rule, some form of westernization is on the way. Not necessarily for the better.
And now this paradise is on the way out. Education is teaching them to cover their breasts, and sometimes tries to make them forsake their pleasure-loving gods for Western ones. During my tour through different villages, I am also surprised to see a large number of automobiles lying idle in many of the natives' backyards, rusting from exposure. A number of Balinese have purchased these cars. They were happy to ride around in them, but the initial cost exhausted their life savings, and then they discovered to their bewilderment that the price of gasoline to run a car for a day is as much as they earn in a month. So the cars are left discarded in the backyards of villages for the chicken to roost in.
Truly, what he observes in Bali only adds to his growing concern for the economic and political future of the world. And the idea that something should be done, or at least said, starts forming in his mind as the end of his stay draws closer. On Saturday, April the 16th, 1932, on the eve of their departure, the brothers celebrate Charlie's 43rd birthday. It's their last night in Bali. The next day, they depart from where they'd landed in Buleleng, heading back to Surabaya. From there, they decide to take a plane, flying over Java in a Dutch Fokker trimotor.
I can see Charlie is quite nervous regarding this Fokker machine. Definitely not his thing.
But for Sidney, of course, it's very different. He's always been an aviation enthusiast, having created one of the first privately owned domestic airlines in the US in the early 1920s. The 5-hour flight from Surabaya to Batavia certainly is a treat for him. Very likely, it might even have been his idea.
Fantastic! We ascend to 14,000 feet and fly over the crater of a volcano. Love the view.
Batavia Airport, finally. Hello, this is Sidney again, always fresh and stylish. As for Charlie, it's been quite a ride indeed, with a steep descent. Dutch cameraman Henk Elsum is here again to film the return of the Chaplins. Then off to Tanjung Priok Harbour, where some fashionable young Indonesians are waiting to get their photo taken with Charlie, who of course kindly obliges before boarding the Affair for Singapore.
Charlie is taken ill on board with some kind of dengue fever, and body temperature rising to 103 degrees Fahrenheit. And there's no doctor on the boat. When we reach Singapore, the ambulance is waiting for Charlie. He has to spend a week in the Singapore General Hospital. In the meantime, I'm staying at the Adelphi Hotel.
In the lounge of this hotel, Sidney is then interviewed by a reporter about their Bali trip.
Well, the further we got away from business, the better. And Bali is a wonderful place. The thing that impressed me very much while there was the peculiarity of their music. I don't think there's anything like it in the world. You hear it all the time. It doesn't matter where you are. The Balinese seem to live on music. Charlie and I enjoyed the place so much. I really wouldn't be surprised if we went back there again. Speaking for myself, I should very much like to revisit it. We then leave Singapore, sailing on the Japanese ocean liner Terukuni Maru. When Charlie shows some of his Balinese footage on board, we notice that several scenes of his dancing are missing. What could have happened? Undoubtedly, it must have been deliberately taken out. If not by Henk Elsum, then by somebody else in his laboratory.
But Henk Alsem replies, adamantly denying it with full sincerity. Could it have been someone else in the processing lab in Java? But who and why? This remains the little mystery that surrounds the Bali trip. And of Chaplin's presence, we are only left with a few fragments surfacing here and there, like a ghost image. Docking in Japan, Chaplin has reached the Far East. But this last Japanese stopover, although eagerly anticipated by him, seems to make a far less important impression than Bali. Perhaps it is also a sign that the journey is drawing to a close.
Charlie, I enjoyed this trip immensely. I always wanted to visit the Orient. Of course, we haven't seen the half of it. But the Orient should be taken in small doses, shouldn't it?
Ah, Sidney, the trail is nearly over. Finally, I have to return to Hollywood with all its absurd values.
Sure, Charlie, but you know there's still no place in the world like America for making pictures.
The brothers bid each other farewell on June the 2nd, 1932. Sidney heads back to the French Riviera, and Charlie to California.
I wonder whether I am happy to be back. I am confused and without plan, conscious of my extreme loneliness. I try to think of someone I know intimately enough to phone and invite for dinner. But there is no one. Most of the silent screen stars have disappeared, and I am out of circulation. I decide to go for a drive, and then take a walk down Hollywood Boulevard. Hollywood still has not fully outgrown the look of a boomtown. There is the same long line of one-story shops, the stale-looking Army and Navy stores, all of it depressing and lacking sophistication. Of course, anything like this after Bali is a bit of a letdown.
This depressing situation is partly why he does not begin working on his new film ideas right away. He also has to slowly go back to the life of a Hollywood celebrity. Here he is at a gala screening of Grand Hotel. But is that where he really wants to be? He prefers instead to pen his travel memoirs. It's a good way to prolong in his mind his trip to the East. So much so that in the end, Charlie Chaplin takes his time. And it's only in February 1933, 9 months after his return to Hollywood, that he completes his manuscript, subsequently published in 5 installments in a popular women's magazine. Then and only then is Charlie able to consider going back to work, which for him means making a new film. And when asked what it would be, he remains elusive.
Oh, this is just a new and unknown project of mine.
What he has in mind is a Balinese script, He works on it for a few years, going through many revisions and different versions. Of course, this script places in the limelight the Balinese dances and ceremonies that fascinated him. But the big news is that it's one of his earliest and most serious attempts at incorporating full dialogue into film. A talkie at long last, and even giving voice to the Balinese. The other striking aspect of his script is his intention to lampoon the colonial powers. Here's one of the introductory scenes imagined by Charlie.
Bali, the last paradise of the East Indies, where humanity lives devoted in their religion, earnest in their work, and happy in their play. Dissolve into a beautiful island with clouds encircling the mountaintops. Passing in the foreground are several fishing boats. Insert Balinese gathering in the golden rice. Dissolve into coconut trees. Insert a silversmith at work and a woodcarver. Dissolve into the compounds where the Balinese live and work at their arts.
And here comes the opening dialogue written by Charlie.
Not so long ago, we never knew what taxes were. Aye, the pale man taxes and we get no rice in exchange. They say they give us roads for them. Well, they give us trouble. If we want roads, we can build them ourselves, like we build everything else, without taxes, without gold. But what do they do with the gold? You never see them wear it on their necks or on their wrists. Ah, they wear it in their pockets.
The tone is set. Chaplin sees colonialism as an extension of capitalism, and he plainly displays his loathing for it. Although Chaplin is somehow unable to complete his Balinese script, it has somewhat paved the way for his next project. Indeed, he decides to turn against the folly of capitalism in the West with a political and socially conscious movie, Modern Times. Charlie ridicules the excess of mechanization and denounces the terrible living conditions of the population hit by the Great Depression. And he introduces his voice for the first time. With such gibberish, Charlie once again mocks the talkies, making it clear that speaking is irrelevant to his character, who, needing no translation, remains universal. The dance moves that accompany his singing appear to mirror what he's seen and even try to replicate in Bali. This marks the last true screen appearance of The Little Tramp, and as soon as Modern Times is released in early 1936, Chaplin decides it's time to return to Bali. This time, the trip is without Sidney, but with Paulette Goddard, his new fiancée, who acted in Modern Times. Together they go via Japan, China, Singapore, then Java, and finally arrive in Bali on March the 29th, 1936. Charlie is back on the island almost exactly 4 years to the day since his first trip.
I'm happy to be back, although Bali is a changed place. More bicycles, more cars. It is not as it should be. It is definitely more commercialized.
Nevertheless, Charlie gives a tour of Bali to Paulette, taking her to some of the places he'd visited during his first trip. But this time he doesn't film, and instead only takes photos of his fiancée in the island setting. Yet this second trip reignites his interest in Bali. And soon after, announcements are made of a Balinese script almost in production. Its title could be Flower of Bali. Charlie is already busy writing it. Of course, he will also be producing and directing it. Obviously, Paulette Goddard will star in it. And a Balinese set will be created in Chaplin's very own studio. Principal photography will start in November 1936, with a release by United Artists announced for March 1937. But once again, for unknown reasons, this new version of the Bali script, specially tailored for Paulette Goddard, never gets produced either. Would Chaplin have been able to deliver a movie lauding Bali's beauty without succumbing to the usual naive clichés typical of most South Seas films, characterized by their primitivist discourse and tropicalist fantasies? Possibly, given that he was intelligent and sensitive enough to see beyond all of this. But this is only conjecture. The only certainty is that even though he does not complete this project, Chaplin does not forget Bali. And when in May 1957 he's asked to contribute to a book of writings about Walter Spies, he kindly obliges. This gives him a new opportunity to remember his time in Bali with the friendly and inspiring Spies and the long hours they spent watching Balinese dances late into the night. Finally, Chaplin goes back one last time to Bali in August 1961 with his wife Una and some of their children as part of a round-the-world trip. They travel to Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and of course, finally, reach Bali. A special place he wants to share with his family. Charlie Chaplin is 72. Bali is still on his mind. In the last years of his life, he starts working on his autobiography. The book is published in 1964. While his Balinese sojourn represented a small part of his long and busy life, Bali features prominently in his writing. Indeed, from the images Chaplin filmed there, and from the various accounts he later published, we understand better that Bali was far from being anecdotal or a mere footnote to his own story. The Balinese world offers a unique perspective on life, different from the mainstream of so-called modern society, largely dominated by Western values. If this remains partly true today, it was even more so in 1932. Chaplin had sensed it immediately, as he recognized that there's more than a single path to take in life. Like a wise Asian sage, he preferred to leave things open-ended.
I only vacillate with inconsistencies, and I have no design for living, no philosophy. Whether sage or fool, we must all struggle with life. The only thing I know is that nothing is permanent in this wicked world, not even our troubles.